Welcome back. This is Eric here. Today I'm going to finish section 5.1, and we were discussing basically populations. We talked about population range, how population growth can be, positive or negative, population density, population distribution, age structure, and then I talked about there are 4 ways a population can change: birth rate, death rate, immigration, and emigration. And 2 of these are positive and 2 of these are negative. And so, yeah. Today, I'm going to focus on 2 types of growth: exponential growth versus logistic growth. Exponential growth means that the population is going to increase extremely rapidly because the conditions are very ideal. Lots of resources, more and more offspring can be sustained in that area. When you graph it out, you'll see a nice J shape. So J-shaped curves are exponential growth. Examples include cane toads. In Australia, and this is usually where I show you this awesome documentary on cane toads. Cane toads were introduced to take care of the cane toad grub. And the problem is the cane toad grub kind of lived like high in the plant, and the cane toads stayed low to the ground. And so the cane toads never ate the cane toad grub. And when Australians introduced the cane toads, there was no natural predators to cane toads. Cane toads, they can lay up to 20,000 eggs, like one female a season. And so cane toads have actually kind of overswept Australia. And there's this great documentary, and I wish we were in class because I would show it to you. I would skip over the part where they talk about the toxins that cane toads can release and how people try to smoke it and get high. But if you literally YouTube search like cane toads, an unnatural history, they break it down into 8 parts. It's a really, really old documentary filled with just lots of Australian accents and just good information. It's an awesome video. But rabbits were also introduced to Australia, and they can reproduce extremely rapidly as well. And again, there's really no natural predators in Australia. See, Australia is actually chock full of ecological problems. It's almost a case study in several types of animals. Bacteria also grow exponentially if, conditions are ideal, which means it's got a lot of resources. So in Australia, I'm going to focus in on the rabbits. They've actually built a rabbit-proof fence, the longest fence in the world, back in 1901. It's 1,139 miles, completed in 1903, and it runs along this part right here in Australia. And you can see that, just look at all of these rabbits in these areas. And the reason why rabbits are so dangerous to the ecosystem in Australia is they burrow underground. They're actually called the chainsaws of the outbacks. They destroy grasses, so soil erosion happens very quickly. They eat a lot of grass. So I did find a short video. Animal Planet used to have a great video talking about this, but they no longer have it posted in the web anywhere, and I can't find it. So I have to settle for this one. A little bit more educational. But it talks about how they're actually using a virus to try to control rabbit populations.
Welcome to this information series on rabbit control and monitoring. Rabbits are Australia's most costly vertebrate pest, causing over $200 million in lost agricultural production every year. We know that as few as 9 rabbits can eat as much as 1 fine wool merino wether. It only takes 1 rabbit per football field-sized paddock to prevent the regeneration of native plants and seedlings. The more rabbits there are, the worse the environmental damage becomes. On an environmental scale, rabbits impact on 304 species of Australian plant and animal. This includes 24 critically endangered species, including the pygmy possum, the orange-bellied parrot, and the ballerina orchid. In the 1950s, the first biological control agent, myxoma virus, was released and caused a reduction of rabbit populations of up to 98% across the country. However, over time, these rabbits have become resistant to myxoma, and we had to introduce additional agents to improve the control of rabbits. In 1995, a biological control agent known as RHDV or calicivirus, the Czech strain, was released and controlled rabbit populations up to about 98% in the drier regions of the country. However, in the cooler, wetter regions, it was not so successful. Now, after almost a decade of research, we are ready to release an additional strain of calicivirus, which was identified in Korea and known as the K5 strain, into Australia's rabbit population. This will be the first time in 20 years that a new biocontrol agent has been released into the rabbit population. This release has gained immense community support, with over 700 sites across the country participating in the release. This series of training videos will help you prepare for the release and how to monitor your rabbit population, but most importantly, how to follow up on the release with conventional control. We know that biological control is not the silver bullet that we need to remove rabbits from the population. It is only a tool to add to the toolbox. So make sure that you follow the instructions on these following videos that guide you how to undertake conventional control following the release using best practice so that you can get the most out of the release and really impact your rabbit population. We hope you enjoy these videos and we look forward to your participation.
So, yeah, trying to control the rabbit population is a still ongoing process. Okay, now another type of growth that populations can experience is called logistic growth. And this is where we see exponential growth, but then it's going to taper off and reach this plateau or stationary phase. And the reason for that is that, well, first off, we see this very fast growth because resources are unlimited, offspring are produced, but then it starts to slow down due to limiting factors. Maybe there's competition for resources as there are more individuals, but the birth rate will slow, and when it plateaus or levels off, we call this the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the amount of individuals that that ecosystem can support. So here's phase 1, rapid growth. Phase 2, it starts to slow down, and phase 3 is when we reach the carrying capacity. All right, some examples. Paramecium population in a laboratory culture, we see the rapid exponential growth, but then as there are many individuals, that culture can only support so many individuals, so we reach the carrying capacity. Same thing with Daphnia for seal population in St. Paul Island of Alaska. Now, like I just mentioned previously, the carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals of a particular species that environment can support. And we see it with the logistic growth as an S-shaped curve. And that carrying capacity is basically the plateau. Now, a lot of times, the population will overshoot the carrying capacity. Resources are limited. The population will dip back below. And then it's like, oh, the population's lower than the carrying capacity, so the population will increase. And so it literally goes up and down. It goes past the carrying capacity and dips below. So we just kind of draw this best fit line for the carrying capacity. However, sometimes a dramatic decline in a population can occur in just a short period of time. So I'm actually going to talk about the reindeer on St. Matthew Island, a perfect case study for logistic growth, carrying capacity, and population crash. And it's told in the story of a comic. St. Matthew Island, a remote outcrop in the Bering Sea, 300 kilometers from mainland Alaska. In 1944, the U.S. Coast Guard establishes LORAN, Long Range Radio Navigation System, on St. Matthew Island, staffed by a crew of 19 men. 29 reindeer are released onto the island as a backup food source. Within months, the station is decommissioned and the men leave the island. The reindeer are left behind. The reindeer find themselves on an island rich in their favorite food, lichen. With abundant resources and no natural predators, the reindeer breed prolifically. Summer of 1957, humans visit St. Matthew Island on a research trip. So, just remember the year that they left, within months of 1944. In just 13 years, the reindeer herd has ballooned from 29 to 1,350 individuals. The reindeer are in excellent health, fat from their nutritious diet of lichen. In the summer of 1963, so just 5 years later, The researchers revisit St. Matthew Island. In 6 years, the reindeer population has soared from 1,350 individuals to 6,000. The dense herd's huge appetite has eliminated the island's lichen, with the population now grazing on sedge grass. With increased competition for food, the animal's body weight has dropped since the last visit. Summer of 1966. The researchers return to St. Matthew Island. They find the island littered with reindeer skeletons. From a population peak of 6,000, only 42 reindeer remain, 41 females and 1 infertile male. There are no calves. With the habitat's resources stretched, the population had been unable to survive the extremes of winter. In a matter of months, the population crashed by more than 99%. Without a way to reproduce, the reindeer population died off completely by the 1980s. The island's untapped natural resources became the reindeer's source of prosperity and also the seeds of their demise. The island was only so big, its resources only so many. How big is our island? And so I always like that last panel, questioning planet Earth and us as humans, how we advance crops with our technology, to feed everybody. But the question is really, how big is our island? How many humans, how many organisms can our planet, which is basically kind of like an island, hold? So that does it for 5.1, How Populations Grow. Today I discussed exponential growth, J-shaped curves, and then logistic growths, S-shaped curves, and carrying capacity. So tomorrow we'll pick it up with limits to growth. We'll talk about density-dependent factors and density-independent factors.